kids won't give you no slack. When the tax man is on the attack, Uncle's there, standing right at your back. And it's the Crash Test Diva.
Hello and welcome to episode 12 of Crash Test Diva. I'm your host, Christy Eichers. We are in the midst of these Olympic Games and we have Olympic fever. I'm excited to let you know we are launching a new segment with a returning guest. Our pal, Jewel Clark from San Diego. She's returning to help us review the Olympic opening ceremonies. And Annie is here, but she is not here to test drive anything. She's helping out with two other segments. I'm going to end the show with a story about my very short-lived figure skating career. Let's get started. It's been quite some time since we've had a Ding Dong Doozy on the show. And for this Ding Dong Doozy, we have a new guest. She's a new guest to this segment, but she's not new to the show. We've got my sister Annie back. And to lead up to this, I'm going to give you a little bit of history behind this Ding Dong Doozy. We've been taking part in a lot of winter outdoor activities, and at one of our last ones, she reached over to me and she said, I have a confession. Or what'd you say?
I have bad news.
I have bad news. And I'm just like, oh. So I will tee it up. I will tee it up that this took place after our trip to Nicollet Mall for Super Bowl Live or NFL Live. And one of our favorite TV stations, KARE 11, was down there. And they were promoting the fact that if you brought some pennies, they had a penny press that would make them into like a little Super Bowl mold, correct?
Correct.
And you had told me before we left, now bring your pennies and bring some quarters because you thought it was going to cost something. So I had loaded up all my pockets with pennies and quarters, and I gave them all to you because I was like, you're in charge of this. So I'll let you take over from there.
So I was in charge of it. And we got there, and after we had our exciting picture taken with Belle and Julie.
Those were the local KARE 11 newscasters.
Very exciting. Then we got in the line for the penny press, and we realized it did not cost us any money, and they just were cranking out pennies and handing them out. So we got our pennies, and you handed me your penny, and you said, you're in charge of this, and I put it in my pocket. And off we went to enjoy the festivities of the evening.
And we enjoyed everything.
We enjoyed. And as we were leaving, a less fortunate Minnesotan approached us for some money.
And it was butt cold. So
It
let's
was
just talk
really
about it. It was
cold.
really cold, and we were really bundled up, and we didn't have like purses or things with
No,
us.
my wallet was at the bottom of my backpack underneath all my other scarves and mittens and things that I had in case I
Right.
needed them.
Right.
But I said, hey, I've got some quarters in my pocket. And I reached in, I said, would you like those? And of course, yes. So I handed in my quarters and off we went. It wasn't until the next day that I realized with the quarters I handed our very special commemorative pressed Super Bowl pennies. I'm sure he was thrilled to get them.
yeah, 'cause I'm sure they're worth a lot.
A lot. You're going to get a lot of currency out of those.
So now there's a follow-up to this, though, because you felt so badly. Would you like to share?
I did. So I got on KARE 11's social media, and
This is our local NBC affiliate.
I explained what happened in a
And
very
you should
long
also
message.
know that Annie and her husband Paul are super fans of this station.
It's our station. Yeah, it's our station. And I just explained what happened and how I accidentally gave them away, and I felt terrible. And they responded to me, and they said, well, the penny press is always at their lobby in Golden Valley, but they have to find out if the Super Bowl penny will still be available or if it will be the Olympic penny, or they also have state fair pennies. And so I have not heard back yet. I've followed up a few times, but I don't want to be a pest because really I'm sure this is nothing to them. I may just drive out to Golden Valley with some pennies and see what I can come up with.
There you go. Yeah. Honestly, I thought if that's the worst thing that happens, that I missed my
I know.
Super Bowl penny.
I
It's
had
okay.
a really good idea.
I know, but we have really good memories of
I
the
know,
days.
I know.
So there you go. Now, Annie, we're going to keep you on for our helpful hints segment. Unfortunately, I still don't have any fancy bumper music for this segment. So I'm just going to have to introduce you. Please tell us what helpful hint we need to learn from you today.
Okay, so I found these a few years ago at the general store, and it is called the Sweater Stone. Now, I now know you can buy them in a variety of places, including Amazon. It's an $8 pumice stone. And what you simply do is brush it over your sweater, and all those nasty little pilly things brush right off.
It's crazy.
It's amazing.
It's crazy.
You can virtually brush a sweater off your sweater if you really are going for it.
That's what always, it's fascinating to me, like how sweaters can have that many layers.
Right? Like you don't, but I will say, if you have a fine gauge sweater, be careful, because I did rub a hole in one time.
Okay.
So you do
Well, I was
need
going to
to be
say,
careful.
and I have used it on cashmere. I mean, I use a
Very
very
gently,
gentle,
right.
but like on a boiled wool sweater, I mean, I have just
Yeah.
brushed the heck out of that thing. And let's talk about a pile of, you need to do that on a hard surface floor because
You could spin something out of that when you're done. if you
honestly,
wanted to,
in fact, I'll maybe do a little video for Instagram so people can see me shaving it's not shaving.
It's not
brushing.
shaving, it's brushing. It's
yeah.
better than those sweater shavers,
Yeah.
I think, by long
Oh,
by long
absolutely.
mile.
And I've had those before, but this thing is amazing. It really works.
And I believe this was one of the very first favorite things gifts I ever gave.
It was. I think you gave these to all the Ikers ladies one year when we were having our
it was a
favorite
while
things
ago,
exchanged.
yeah.
But I love this thing. We will put a link to it on Amazon. We are coming to the end of sweater season. Cross your fingers, Minnesotans. And
We've got months.
Your sweaters have gotten a workout, and they are pilly, and they desperately need a little brushing with this stone. So
That's right.
You're
The
going to want to
sweater
pick
stone.
one up, and it's super, super affordable.
Yes.
Yeah. So
And it's a prime item if you get it on Amazon. So.
yeah, exactly. So I'm going to put the link to that. So thank you for that very useful, helpful hint. And I can't wait. I think we have you back next week to talk with us about some pet products. So people, stay tuned. Annie will be back. Today we've got a new segment on the show. I'm calling it A Look Under the Hood. And what's fun and exciting about this new segment? Well, we have a returning guest to help us. She's back. She was on, oh my gosh, she was on one of our first episodes. We've got Miss Jewel Clark back with us. If you recall, she's the woman with 2 avocado trees in her front yard. So welcome back.
Thank you. I'm glad to be back. Thanks for having me.
Well, we're so excited. So the way this came about is after Jewel and I, first of all, I should clarify something. A lot of people talked to me after you came on and they said, how long have you two known each other? And it's like, no, we met on the phone that day.
Yeah, that's how long.
Exactly. We had never really talked before then. So that was it. So they think we've known each other forever. And again, you're kind of like a friend in my head. And I feel this kindred spirit with you.
Yes.
And we became Facebook friends right after that. And all of a sudden, I'm preparing for this Olympic Fever episode. And I see in your feed, your post. Will you tell all of our listeners about your post on Facebook the other day?
Well, you have boxes of holiday decor. And so, of course, this week I had to get out the Olympics box because we all have those, right? And I have a set of Olympics rings that I've made out of technically I think it's foam that you would make maybe a wreath out of or something like that, but they're wrapped in fabric and they hang from the ceiling right over my television. So they just kind of sway with, the excitement. And so I've got my Olympics rings up. So I posted my selfie with the rings.
Jewel, I had no idea that you made those. Now I'm even more impressed.
Thank you.
I just saw them. You made those. So we are going to post a picture of Jewel's Olympic rings in the gallery.
Absolutely.
So you guys can all see it. And maybe, I don't know if you have any instructions for how to make those, or they'll just be able to figure it out on their own.
Probably piece together something that could help people if they also wanted to replicate
Did
this.
you come up with this on your own, or was this some kind of Pinterest thing you found?
I feel like it might have been kind of I don't know if it was pre-Pinterest, but before I was pinning extensively. So a few years ago, I had a Olympic opening ceremonies party. I really like to have the parties that nobody else has. Like, I do usually have an Oscar party, and I'm really upset that they're a little late this year and conflict with a conference that I have to be out of town for. But anyway, so we had an Olympics opening ceremony party, and that was the year it was in London, because I know like the flags, we also made like flags that you hang up, and there was definitely some like
this
fabric.
was Summer Olympics.
Yeah, that was London
themed.
Okay. And so I hung it actually over my bar for that. But now every time the Olympics comes around, I just hang it over my TV.
Well, I love your Olympic spirit.
Thanks.
I'm very excited. And I have to tell you, all of a sudden, I wasn't aware. I always knew opening ceremonies were on Friday night, but all of a sudden, Thursday, I got a text from my sister and she was like, "Are you watching skating?" And I'm like, "What? It started tonight?"
Yeah.
And I can't tell you, because now let's just let the horribly disrupted sleep pattern for the next 2.5 weeks begin, because you live and die by the TV schedule now. Am I correct?
Well, I'm more of a streamer. So that really helps because I can just really get my Olympics on demand. The bigger problem is really that it's not so much about the TV schedule, but like life only has so many hours. And if you add up every single event that you wanted to see, I'm pretty sure it would be, you could watch for the next year, every spare moment.
I know. Yeah. And I think, like, to your point, the live streaming, you could be watching curling while you're watching, curling on the laptop, and then you could watch the opening ceremonies last night if you wanted to. I think there's opportunities to have a 2-monitor, 3-monitor system.
Kind of like picture for people who were around back in the day.
Oh my God, I haven't heard that in ages. I am ready to talk about those opening ceremonies. So I'm going to just turn it over to you and let me know what you thought, some of your favorite things, some of your highlights. I'll share some of my feelings about it.
As far as opening ceremonies go, it seemed a little underwhelming. It's a little smaller of a space, but at the same time, there's something about really like respecting a budget that I can totally get on board with, because sometimes I'm like, gosh, this country, it's like you could be spending that money on food, or, like, especially when you go to these countries that really struggle. And so, I appreciate they really got into their history. I liked that was kind of centered around these, 4 or 5 kids and their story, bringing it along. So they had some really creative pieces.
So let's back up. So this morning I was with my brother-in-law and sister, and all of a sudden he said, "What were those kids about?" Do you have a better answer than I did? Because I was like, I think they were to show like the future of Korea.
Yeah, they were our guides through the culture. I was like, excited about that I was going to be on a podcast. So I literally took a few notes because I was like, I don't want to forget things.
I was going to say, I've got 3 notes, so I can't wait to hear yours. You just take the lead. Jesus, take the wheel here, Jewel. Let's go.
So, but they, so those 5 elementary school children, they were supposed to be our guides through Asian culture, but then with a focus on the Korean traditions. So, yeah, I liked the animals, and I always like those crazy floor projections. It's so fun. Because I don't know if you didn't see it, they have the floor where they're able to project onto it kind of the scene. And so the kids are like walking and it becomes a giant mountain and things like that. And so,
yeah, and they talked a lot about technology, how the Koreans are leading the way with a lot of technology. That was another constant theme throughout.
Yes. Yeah, and I liked how it was kind of like this juxtaposition of like their old culture and the new technology. There was a scene where they were in some kind of ancient, I don't know, building in Korea, and they had kind of the animals leap off of the wall in, kind of fiery projections, and then later all those animals were depicted as like giant, almost like Lion King-esque, if you've seen like the Broadway Lion King show, how they have those animals running around. So they
like the puppets.
The puppets. Yeah. So they kind of pulled out of their history for that.
I don't think I paid as good of attention as you did, because I was a little bit underwhelmed, and there were a couple things that kind of bugged me. Do we want to talk about that yet?
Yes.
Or do you have some more positive things to talk about?
The dirt.
It was a little painful for me to listen to the Korean pop singers sing John Lennon's Imagine. That was painful. It was hard. And I get, like, we were talking about peace and everything, and that was a good message. But I just struggled with that one. I don't know about you. I will say the last singer had adorable hair. That cute short-haired girl on the end, she was adorable. But I'm sorry, I really was struggling with that one.
It was definitely in a collective group, and I think they're looking at the national or international people and picking something everyone recognizes, but it wasn't quite, representative of the song, maybe. Yeah. Do you have a favorite part then?
My favorite part was absolutely the synchronized snowboarders. And I know they shot that. That was not live.
Yeah.
They shot that in like alternate, like great weather conditions because they were worried about that. But I have never seen synchronized snowboarders. And then when they ended and they had the pyrotechnics and it was like they were all sparklers. I was like, that is so cool.
Well, and they were
That was very
synchronized
cool,
with
I thought.
drones too. So like, you know, up in the sky, they had all the drones and they actually got all of these drones into Olympic ring formation. And
That was
and
very
so
cool.
I thought that was a cool component of it. And I think kind of matched because in the stadium they did a lot with stars. And so the drones kind of had that starry look because they were just like a light in the sky.
Yes.
But I guess Korea was one of the early star mappers. So they're really into stars.
Oh, okay.
talked
I
about
didn't know
that.
that. No, how many drones were there? Because were they like 2,000? Are you
It was
looking
a
that up?
lot. I'm
Because
looking to
today
see
I
if I
watched a
made a
little
note on that.
recap, and all of those drones were operated by 2 people. Is the other thing I learned today, which was kind of fascinating to me because that seems like a lot of production for 2 people to manage.
I wonder if they're pre-programmed. You know what I mean? Like, so you're not actually you
Right,
know.
exactly.
So
Oh, it
yeah.
has
So
to be,
in
yeah.
in my notes, I said video of a zillion snowboarders and drones.
A
So
zillion.
I'm pretty sure that's accurate. Zillion.
Hey, never let the truth interfere with a good story, my friend. I like the exaggeration.
Yeah.
That helps.
No, yes, but and the drones are powered by Intel. They would like you to know that.
I will tell you another different dynamic for me this year was we didn't have Bob Costas or Matt Lauer. And so to lose both of them in one year was a little bit disruptive, will you say? The dynamic was just a little different for our friend Katie Couric.
Yeah, well, and Mike Tirico, I just feel like he's a robot that reads off of a teleprompter. It just sounds like he's straight up reading like one of my high school students doing a presentation. And so I'm just really not impressed with the way that he does his thing.
I'm kind of dying to know, like, is he going to be doing the late night, when they're around the fire, that kind of thing, where they do that, they bring him in at night and it's after the news and you watch that little recap of the day and they do the gold medal count. And that was normally Bob Costas, right? So I don't know who's going to fill that role. I'm kind of dying to find out.
Yeah, I guess.
Well, we'll find out tonight.
Know soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll find out tonight. Yes.
I heard something that
Okay.
was about his contract when he came over, that he demanded to do the Olympics, and that they may have led to certain people not doing the Olympics.
Well,
so
maybe he'll grow on. Maybe I think the opening ceremonies have to be really a painful thing to do the commentary for, to be perfectly honest with you, because they're kind of slow.
but
They're kind of slow.
At the same time, do you need a commentary through everything? I think that's one question. I mean, when you get to the Parade of Nations, that's clearly commentary land. But, I think sometimes, you can watch a movie with the commentary on or off, but they don't really give you a choice when it comes to the NBC Olympics coverage. So, I don't know.
Well, one thing about the Parade of Nations that I noticed this year, even more so in years past, and I think it's because it's the Winter Olympics, is all of the athletes who were born somewhere else, smaller nations that don't really have Winter Olympic sports. They're not known for that, but they live in the United States, so they went back to represent, or they're representing their country. I thought that was fascinating, how much of that this year. Did you notice that?
I did, yeah. So there's a lot of single people representing their country. And so one was actually super interesting. I'm trying to remember who it was, but there was one guy who actually learned a lot of his snowboarding on an indoor snowboarding hill. And I just feel like, how do you snowboarding just seems too big to put indoors. But
I don't know.
apparently not. But yeah, I think a lot of it is people who, maybe they live in the U.S. or they live somewhere else and they have close enough heritage that country will allow them to go under their flag. In the U.S., I imagine it's much more competitive than a country who has no one else.
Yes.
So if I had a tight connection to one of those countries, I might be an Olympic skier, and I haven't skied since I was a kid. So. Yeah.
But Jamaica has their first female bobsled team because that's the first time I think like one of these nations that isn't known for winter sports. That was kind of the one that broke out, and I think that was already 2 decades ago. If you can believe that, we're getting old.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we can remember. Yeah.
original
So,
one.
what do they call that movie?
Cool Runnings?
Cool Running.
Yeah.
Was that what? Yeah. We're aging ourselves. Anyway.
Now, I think we can't talk about the opening ceremony without talking about the 2 Koreas, right? And it's really interesting. I'm curious to see where it goes from here. But the sister to Kim Jong-un from North Korea showed up, which was unexpected, and like literally was seated like 2 people away from Mike Pence, and so it just really looked awkward every time they shot the political box.
Uncomfortable to watch. It was so uncomfortable to watch. I was dying.
and it
was like, and she kind of had like a sourpuss resting bitch face.
Well, I would
did you
too
notice
if I
that?
lived in North Korea, but that's a separate. I mean.
We've never gotten political on Crash Test Diva.
I'm trying
Thanks
to
for
keep it
bringing
out
us
of
to
the
this new
other
level.
side of the politics, but I think that, and what's
I was
interesting
going to say, it was those shots were really just uncomfortable to
Yes.
watch. So when the U.S. walked in and Vice President Pence and his wife are like cheering and clapping and waving at all the athletes, and she's sitting right behind just like stone-faced.
But that's how
and
it was
then,
when Korea walked out, that she was cheering and he was just, we were like, oh, he must have left. And then we looked closer. No, he's right there just sitting. So I don't know if that was kind of like an agreed upon or some kind of, this is, you want to give them their time in the spotlight. But it was obviously they did not cheer for each other. So, yeah.
You're right. It was
but they
super
are
awkward.
doing a lot of
Super awkward.
unified things. So there is the hockey team, which I'm guessing Minnesotans are big on the hockey cheering side, but there's a combined women's hockey.
Jewel, you are correct. We are a big hearty hockey town state.
I do want to ask you a little bit about the weather and the temperature, because there seemed to be a lot of people upset, and I think it was like 15 degrees or 20 degrees, and people were very concerned, and they had to have like jackets that had warmers in them. And now I have to say, this morning I was a little chilly because it's in the 60s in my house.
Oh my God.
So I'm not the one to judge, but I
Okay,
just want to know, what is the Minnesota perspective on this whole temperature thing?
Well, I was laughing because they kept saying last night, "Oh, it's warmer than expected," and I think it was about 15, if I heard correctly. But then I think they talked about at one point it was 0 at some point there. I woke up this morning and it was 0, and it's a Saturday morning here, and I was telling you before we went live, before we started recording, that I put on some tights that are fleece lined. I put on some long underwear. I put on some wintry pants, and then I put on a long down skirt and 2 pairs of socks and a pair of boots and a couple layers on top and a big hat. And my sister, brother-in-law, and I went and walked in this like a fun run walk thing, and it was quite comfortable. So no, we're not impacted by it. I think our technology with our clothing has gotten so good that you just don't even get cold when you dress appropriately. So they should not be having an issue with the weather. I mean, maybe the Jamaicans, because God knows their blood has to be different. I mean, they have to their blood has to be so thin that they can't handle the cold temps.
These are actually Winter Olympics, so they have spent their entire existence doing snow and winter and cold-based sport. So I was just really surprised because, here, although I'm like, I had to put on slippers because it's in the 60s, I don't have most of the things you just mentioned, like fleece lined. They don't even sell that in stores here. But I just really felt like the Olympics, those Olympians should be able to handle it. Like, how can they not handle that?
So, I will say, I in their defense, like snow places where people snow and stuff, it's usually not as cold as it is in Minnesota.
Right.
So I think Yeah, I think it might be cold for some. And as we mentioned, there's some countries that are competing that aren't normally, known for their cold weather sports.
Yes.
And so they probably are really not acclimated to this. But yes, that's funny that it did not even, I didn't even really notice it, but that's super funny that you did.
But
So
then,
there
like,
go.
the Bermuda guy is literally wearing Bermuda shorts. So I feel like if you can handle that, like, come on, U.S.
Okay, one thing I also have to just tell you that I was a little bit, and maybe you have a different perspective on this, so I'm kind of hoping you do. But at one point in the stadium, and I think it was part of the culture, they had some guys out there, maybe there were women, and they had some rollerblades, I think they were, and they had some kind of like, it almost looked like pyrotechnics coming out of the heel of the rollerblade, which was very cool. But the costumes they had them in, they had like their masks like on the top of their head. I don't know if you remember
Was this
this
the
kind
goblins?
of. They looked like from the Wizard of Oz. They looked like the flying monkeys. That's all I could see were the flying monkeys.
Well,
Did you get that reference or no?
No, but they apparently the Koreans see goblins as good luck towards the future. So
so
they
that's what
did
those
bring out
guys were?
goblins, particularly as good luck champions. They possess a magical ability to help humans. So
Okay, that's what they think of a goblin.
it throws off a lot of like American movies if you think about goblins as magical creatures that help humans. I feel like that's a really different look.
Well, right. And I was going to say, and if you think of what I thought they looked like, I mean, on The Wizard of Oz, they were not kind. They were the flying monkeys. They were, as I'm still traumatized about that from my childhood. That's who they reminded me of. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I could see that. I like that.
Oh, I'm
You
glad.
should
I'm
put that
glad.
on
I'm glad I wasn't the only
on
one.
podcast.
Okay. Anything else from our Olympic opening ceremonies review?
I don't think there's that much more that people even want to hear. If they cared, they would have watched it. No. But I do have to say, apparently, with our 242 athletes, the Team USA has the most Olympians for any country in any Winter Olympic game ever. So we have a huge amount. And they did the breakdown. The most actually come from California with 22. But Minnesota had 20 athletes. So that's a lot. Well, you guys have winter.
California had 22. How did you guys get 22 Winter Olympians?
Well, like, I mean, San Diego has like Shaun White, the snowboarding.
I know, but I know, but it just cracks me up when you think of like California versus like a Colorado, a Minnesota. You know what I mean?
think we have about
That's all I'm
10% of
saying.
the American population. So if we're sending 10%, I'm not kidding. Like for reals. We have, I think California's 12% of the population of America lives in California. And so, we actually, that seems pretty consistent out of 242 athletes that we're sending about 12%. So
You have studied for this review. I'm so impressed.
I work in our region with schools, and just San Diego County has more students in it than over 22 states. So it's like a lot. We have a lot of people over here on the coast.
Wow, you do. Yeah, you guys could be your own country.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you look at the East Coast, if you split each one of our counties in as a state, then that would probably be pretty similar. As far as, population and size.
Fascinating.
And
now we're getting a California population lesson right here. Right here. I can't thank you enough. This has been a lot of fun. I appreciate the much better note taking you made throughout the opening ceremony. I was not paying that close of attention to it, I guess. So.
It made it more boring for me to talk about because it was very fact based. So you're very welcome. And
we can't wait to have you back on again. Well, this concludes our first ever segment of A Look Under the Hood. And Jewel, I can't thank you enough for being here again. It was so fun to have you back on the show.
Yes, absolutely. Anytime.
As I watch the figure skaters take to the ice at the Olympics, I've been reminded of a story from my childhood. It's not a fond memory. I'd say it was a wee bit traumatic. With that little lead-in, let's just say, let me tell you a story. When you tune into NBC to watch the prime time coverage of the figure skating competitions, you will see the same thing happen each time a skater takes to the ice. Before they head out, they remove their skate guards and they hand them to a sweet little Korean host. She's holding a basket and they set them in the basket. I don't know what she's called, but she's like the skate guard host. I've never seen this role before. In the past, I remember them passing them off to their coaches to hold. Anyway, this very insignificant pre-performance ritual would normally go unnoticed by many. But for me, I get a bit of PTSD. It takes me back to my first and only skating show at the Mankato Ice Palace. It's now called the All Seasons Arena, but I remember it when it was the Ice Palace. Shortly after I watched Dorothy Hamill compete at the Olympics, I got the Hamill haircut and I asked if I could take skating lessons. So at the ripe old age of 10, I started my skating career. Mom signed me up for Saturday morning lessons. I think it was about a 6 or 8 week session, and I took 2 sessions to learn the basics. Right after that, they announced that there would be a spring ice show, and I asked Mom if I could be in it. She said, "Sure, you can do it," and she signed me up. Over this past weekend, my mom came to stay, and we watched a few rounds of Olympic figure skating coverage. At one point, a skater fell, and she said, I let you take skating lessons, but I just never really encouraged you that much. I can't imagine all that training, and then you have to watch your kid fall." Okay, as this kid fell, I actually watched my mom cover her eyes. It was just too painful for her to witness. Keep in mind, this was not some U.S. skater that we had been following for years. It was somebody from Italy that we had never watched before. Okay, back to that ice show. I was not part of the Mankato Skating Club, Mankato Figure Skating Club. I don't know what it was. Anyway, I wasn't one of them. So I only had one number and one costume. I was put into this South Pacific portion of the show, and I was skating to the song Honey Buns. We wore these orange and pink lycra kind of tankini things, and we had these pink plastic hula skirts. We had practices leading up to the show, and now we lived, my family, just over a mile from the arena. And so Mom or Dad would drop me off, and then I'd go practice for, about an hour, and then they'd pick me up. The worst part about the whole skating process for me at the age of 10 was tying and putting on my skates and getting them tight enough, et cetera, et cetera. So we would always put my skates on at home, and I'd put my skating guards on, and then they'd drop me off. I'd run into the arena, take off my skate guards, and go do my little, rehearsal. Well, one day I got dropped off, and I headed in, and I ran into a bit of what I would call a quote-unquote mean girl who was in my same Honey Buns number with me. She was part of the skating club, so she had multiple numbers. I said hi, and she looked at me, and she said, "What are you doing here?" I told her I was there for practice. She scoffed at me and said, "We don't have practice today," and she turned and walked away. At the age of 10, at any age, you hate to be wrong. And it is even worse when the mean girl points out your mistake. Okay, let's be honest. I'm sure Mom was keeping my calendar at this point, so it probably really wasn't my mistake, but I was devastated. And at the age of 10, your problem-solving skills are not stellar. And I didn't know what to do. I was standing on my skates without any street shoes, without a quarter to use the payphone. Okay, maybe back then it was only a dime. Instead of talking to an adult to ask for a quarter or asking somebody in the office if I could call my mom to just have her come pick me up, I decided I would just walk home in the winter on my skates for over a mile without a sidewalk. This was not my wisest decision. Since I wasn't an Olympic caliber athlete, I was not wearing the highest quality of skates. And the skate guards were not that great either. They kept falling off. I was walking on the edge of a very busy street against traffic. Okay, that was the one smart thing I did. And there were snert drifts. Okay, for those of you non-Minnesotans, snert is a combination of snow and dirt. And that was what I was walking in, because when the snowplows go through, they move all the snert to the side of the road. So I was walking through snert drifts. Sometimes my guards would fall off my skates and I would just be walking on the snert and I'd hit like the concrete and then maybe I'd hit a patch of ice. It was treacherous. Now, for those real skaters here, they are dying thinking about the damage I'm doing to the blades on my skates. But keep in mind, my mom probably got my skates at a secondhand store. As I got closer to home, there was a big hill, and I made it up that hill. And I can't imagine how ridiculous I looked as I walked this entire mile on my skates. I walked into my house, and I know that there were some tears shed on the treacherous march from the Ice Palace to my home. And when I walked into the house, I broke into uncontrollable sobs. Probably not so much about that death march on blades I just succeeded in doing, but more about showing up at the wrong time. Mom tried to console me, and she quickly checked the schedule. Indeed, we had the right time. She called the coordinator, and the coordinator said, yes, we did have rehearsal. The mean girl was wrong, but I now had missed a rehearsal. Let's just say more tears were shed. I mentioned this to Mom over the weekend and asked her if she remembered anything about the story. She just started to giggle, and she said, I can't believe you walked all the way home on your skates. Okay, so skating did not win out as my activity of choice. That was my one and only ice show. I did, however, learn a very valuable lesson. A life lesson that still rings true today. Never, ever listen to the mean girl. That's it for our show. Thanks so much for joining us. Annie, thanks for sharing a ding-dong doozy on yourself. Jewel, thanks for taking such great notes about the opening ceremonies. Go USA! And thanks also to Josie Eichers. She is the one managing our website and digital marketing. Make sure you check out what we are doing on Instagram. You don't want to miss it. If you like this episode, please leave us a review on iTunes and share it with a friend. It's so easy. Just go to your phone and click on the purple dot with the 3 little dots inside of it. When you do this, you will see the option to share episode. From there, click on it and you can text or email it to a friend. Tune in next week. We will be celebrating National Love Your Pet Day. Who knew? Remember, bruises are like life. The harder you get hit, the more colorful and interesting they get.
Diva.